So dudes, welcome back to the Gwen gaming experience. It's been a long time since I've done some patch notes. Really big updates here. Sledge is a 2-speed again. We see a couple of utility items kind of get tossed around, but overall the feedback for this particular set of patch notes has been overwhelmingly positive, which is kind of uncommon for these kinds of videos. Usually it's just me kind of complaining the whole time, but there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So let's get into it. So what stands out the most obviously in terms of pick rates right now is Ashe. As you can see, Ashe is hovering at close to 60, but just about 56% in terms of the operator presence chart. And her win delta isn't like super crazy, but it's still very much on the other end of the distribution, with Ace and Buck following slightly behind. Ashe has pretty much every toolkit that you could ever want in a ranked environment. She can get rid of bulletproof cameras, and she has a good gun, and she is a 3-speed, path of least resistance, all that. Nothing too surprising there. Pretty standard thing that happens to the entry frag of the week whenever all of the other utility options for other entry fraggers are exhausted. That's why Iana's not there anymore. Ace is still the premier hard breacher because he can, open stuff without as much resistance. You don't have to be as slow as Iana. You can put a whole bunch of stuff on the wall. You can do it from a distance. You don't have to worry as much about bandit tricking because everything's going to open at the same time, right? Not too surprising there either. But Buck, I can actually kind of advocate for that as well as myself, because Buck has kind of been my go-to solo queue main recently, because I'm noticing that in the more TDM, I guess, affied sort of gameplay style, I really do like to take advantage of breaking apart the map as much as possible to create unfair gunfighting circumstances for the defense, because my attacking kind of sucks. So Buck is really good in the sense that he is able to do a wide variety of things without taking too much away from your team should you need something more specific. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons that he was recently nerfed, I'm sure. I am next to a train station, if you can hear that in the distance there. But Dekebi, I'm surprised, isn't as high as she used to be. Blackbeard, we'll get into that. And then you can see, the big blob of attackers there that kind of like hovers around in terms of different characters that, have more niche kind of like, okay, here's a puzzle piece. Let me bring this character to solve the puzzle. Now, what is kind of cool is that you can see Striker actually has a pretty decent win delta, and that kind of lends to this idea in ranked that Swiss Army knives aren't necessarily a bad thing in ranked as much as they would be in a competitive environment. In fact, in competitive, I've seen a couple of strikers, not too many, but frequently enough to justify the fact that, having her as an option is something that some teams benefit from, which is cool to see. Now we can take a look at the defenders. As you can see here, you can see my mouse. I switched it over to display capture. We're going to take a look at some ban rates too, briefly after this, comparing this with some of the Rainbow Six invite quals. Now, little side note, I will not be going to the Invitational this year, sadly. I am kind of trying to get my ish together here. It's... As you can probably tell by the backdrop, not nearly half of the things that I would like set up for the stream are pretty much in place at the moment. And a lot of the artwork that I had isn't really something that I'd like to incorporate into this new space. We're going to have a fresh start here. But just a little aside, unfortunately, I will not be going to Boston, but I will make a proactive effort to come through for any other North American land. So if you want to say hi, I will make a concerted effort for that at some point. But have fun at Invite. Now, got to refresh the page here because I did something wrong with the thingamajig. All right, now we're back and I don't have to make a cut. Let's snip that in place. Okay, so a lot more variation with the defense, which is always kind of the case with this game. On attack, you have to have a lot of your T's crossed and your I's dotted. I think a little bit more than defense. Defense has always had a lot more flexibility in terms of the utility options that you could kind of bring to the puzzle piece. On attack, if you want to get map control and you want to be efficient about it, you're going to have your dedicated entry frag, usually your hard breach, if there is a main wall to open. We will get to that in a bit as well. But as you can see here, we got Valk, we got Legion, and we got Doc, the ranked operator. Now, Rook and Doc, I kind of, swap back and forth in terms of the ranked Reno kind of play. And Doc is pretty much up there right now because he's very self-sufficient, right? He can stim himself, he can stim people from a distance, he's a great sight anchor, and he has a great gun with an ACOG scope. So being able to hold those angles from a distance and kind of entrench yourself in a hard to push position is really nice, because not a lot of attackers are going to have that ability to reach out and punch at you without much recoil. That's the other thing about the MP5 that's so nice, is that it has an ACOG, which is really, that favors people with high mechanical ceilings and floors, but it also doesn't have much recoil. So somebody with good mechanical aim is going to be able to leverage that more than a number of different guns. And so as a result of that, just because the MP5 doesn't have as much damage output per se as something as like an ACS-12 or a Scopos AR or even a Jaeger AR, that doesn't matter, right? Because you're going to be precisely hitting headshots, and that's what counts. So in ranked, that ability to just kind of, take gunfights right now is really, really strong for him. I do appreciate that Rook is starting to see a little bit more win delta, and I think the reason for that is that he's kind of slept on in this current meta, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. Now, Legion, Valkyrie, these operators don't really surprise me either, because what both of these operators do is they're really, really easy kind of like throw into the puzzle piece kind of operators that you can use without having to worry about messing with your main setup. So these are operators that can leverage your gunfighting skills further and further away from the bomb site. We're starting to see the entire map is played to its fullest extent. It's really, really difficult to hold a site in Rainbow Six Siege right now if you're just turtling up and sitting tight and just playing the util game. That sort of thing isn't really, that hasn't been a thing for years, and it's been getting diminished to a degree, at least comparatively to how it was in 2020, despite the game, actually mechanically being a little bit slower, I should say a lot slower, which is a funny little kind of aside when you really think about it. But basically, Valkyrie just has a very, very strong floor that she can bring to the table, where she has leverage in the late game, where she throws the Valkyrie cameras inside in case she gets shot. That's not a big deal. But then she can throw the cameras wherever she wants to assist the roam in whatever kind of way she wants. So we're starting to see a lot less of an emphasis on kind of like dumping a bunch of util into one spot and trying to keep a wall open. We have been seeing operators that can really go out of their way to assist the roam as much as possible. And Legion has early warning plus slowdown ability with the traps, and Valkyrie obviously can play off of the cameras and play really aggressively, a lot more risky than you can, I think, with other operators on the board. So a lot less utility dumping and a lot more just like, let's go fight them. Let's go fight them on the edges, on the outskirts of the building, and do it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I also want to briefly draw attention to Scopos here. I'm really happy to see that Scopos is actually, playing really well. This is a character that doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles in terms of like, she doesn't have a utility shotgun. She doesn't have any bulletproof utility aside from the fact that the robot exists as a camera. Scopos really says a lot about the current Rainbow Six meta, and that is we're in a TDM meta. We're in a very gunfight heavy, roam heavy meta, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is less strategic, right, or less tactical. Of course, these are all kind of boilerplate definitions that get thrown around in gaming spaces all the time, right? Tactical is when brain, not tactical is when shoot gun in game and hit shot, of course. There is a strategic capacity, right, to the fact that you have to play the edges of the map as much as possible in order to slow down the attack as much as possible, because flexibility, positional flexibility is the name of the game in Rainbow Six Siege right now, and Scopos brings that to the table, right? When you can bring a character on Oregon top floor here of the silo, right, just pretend that that's what this is. You can play and then deny people coming from the staircase for that big hit going towards attic, and you don't have to play life, right? Having that ability to just like have presence wherever you want and then retreat without any circumstances is extremely powerful. So that's kind of the name of the game right now. The state of the meta is very gunfight centric and very positional flexibility oriented. You want characters that are fast. You want characters that have things like impact grenades or things that can destroy soft material to make it easier for you to navigate the map. Because nowadays, Chalet being a good example, right? We don't really just like play for one floor anymore. We try to clear the entire thing, shut down the roam game as much as possible so we don't get caught with our pants down, and we just try to play the map as if there can be somebody around any corner. That's kind of how the game is at this current state. So let's go down to your comfort bands in ranked, and as you can see, Blackbeard is at the top of the list. Almost a 50% ban rate. The funny part about that ban rate is that it's not just you, right? It's not just you and your buddies in ranked. It's also happening in professional play. Here is North America invite quals. Blackbeard with a 53% win rate. What the heck is going on with Blackbeard? Well, here's what's going on. So you got a guy who just has a free body and leg shot, protective hitbox that doesn't do any damage if you shoot him there. And, that's just kind of it, right? He's just a guy with armor. Effectively, that's kind of how he is played right now, because the only thing that really differentiates him from Montang, right, in the sense that he is a shield operator, is the fact that he has an automatic rifle. So he gets all of the upside of having an automatic weapon on attack without any of the downside in terms of what is typically brought with a shield. So something that I think a lot of people probably, I guess in terms of the power fantasy, thought that Blackbeard was going to be more of was to be in a bit more of a supportive kind of bulwark role and maybe have some opportunities to play like an aggressive fragger. But in practice, what people are doing with the shield, right, is they're not slowly kind of like strategically deciding their engagements piece by piece. They're quick peeking with the shield, right? And it looks really goofy because, you just have this guy with this giant block and it's moving like 5 million miles an hour. And he quick peeks with the shield, and then he has a full auto assault rifle, and he's just he's Montang with an assault rifle. There's not a whole lot to really talk about there. And, it sounds a bit reductive and maybe a little facetious to describe the character design this way, but that is kind of what's happening, right? That's what I'm encountering in ranked. That's what I see people seem to be talking about in competitive, is that there's just no reason to not bring the guy right now. He is such a good, aggressive entry frag character. He can breach through walls, right? He has that, like we were talking about earlier, ability to go through soft material, and he has frag grenades. So I'm really not sure what the answer is, if there is an answer, or if it's something that's worth looking at. We're probably going to have to wait a little bit longer for more data to come out on him. But as you can see, for the comfort bands and ranked, that story is kind of similar, right? We want characters that can get in there and get in your face and start taking gunfights very quickly, or narrow down gunfights to make them more manageable. Dokebi with the roam clear, Jackal as well, and Monty and Blitz, right? Despite the nerfs, shields are still very, very, very much in. And also Deimos there, I would assume, in, pockets of Elo where there's a lot more of a strategic, decided focus on, we know this character is going to shut down this aspect of our roam game. And then we get to defense bans, and it's really clear that I have not been playing the game for a long time, because I guess I'm dog shit because I don't really see Fenrir get banned anymore. I guess that is indicative of the Elo bracket that I am currently in terms of the matchmaking system. But that's okay, because if we look in competitive, that's not really the case right now, which is kind of funny. So what is going on here? Oh, wrong thing. So this is kind of an example of a comfort ban in terms of, I think, negative sentiment that developed around Fenrir over the course of his time, especially towards the beginning of his time in the game, where he clearly was a little bit overtuned and there were some, non-fun aspects about playing around him. Fenrir is just one of those characters where people don't like having agency taken away from them, especially when it comes to gunfights in a game like this, right? And that kind of speaks into this idea that we want to have flexibility in terms of our positioning and go wherever we want and take whatever gunfight we want whenever we choose to do it. And Fenrir, despite the relatively recent nerfs, is still really good at being that unforeseen factor of you never know, right? You're going to go around a corner and then you'll probably run into a Fenrir mine. And so this ban, right, is I think more of a comfort ban and less of a strategic kind of like really specific decision. It's just, running into Fenrir traps are just annoying, right? The more strategic decision here is obviously going to be the Mira ban, because in a gunfight meta, who's going to be really, really strong? Well, obviously a character who can manipulate the battlefield and take gunfights in whatever way that she wants to, and that's Mira. So not super surprising there. Mira is always going to be really good in this game, just based off of the nature of the way it's designed in terms of, being able to play off of the one-way mirror is always going to be really, really strong. Any kind of bulletproof glass is going to be really good in this game, because you can quickly just do a little tappa when you lean around it. And then Vigil, I think we're looking at a Boss G annoyance ban there, probably. Clash, a bit of a comfort ban. Capkin, a bit of a comfort ban. And then the more strategic options down here. But as you can see, Valkyrie, what's interesting about Valk is that in ranked, her ban rate just really isn't there. But if we go to competitive, who's the most banned operator right now? Valkyrie actually gets banned more than Azami right now. I bet you never thought you'd see that, huh? Remember when she was getting banned like 60-70% of the time? Well, now that we've narrowed down all of the options here, right? What's the one operator that's going to leverage the gunfighting the most for her team? That's going to be Valkyrie with her cameras, like we said at the beginning of the video. So just something interesting there. And I also noticed that Tubarão is getting banned pretty significantly still. So that flexibility, right? Being able to throw and deny the wall if there is a main wall from a distance in a way that Bandit or Cade can't really do as effectively. That makes sense to me as well. All right, so let's get into the patch changes. So once again, I really, really hate to say it, but Buck has had a utility thing taken from him once more. He lost the Gon 6, he lost the frag grenades infamously a long time ago, and now he has lost his can openers. So here's the thing. I think with Buck, this is another example of I'm not angry about it. I would just like there to be a clear demarcation of what we want Buck to be versus Sledge. Is it okay for Buck to have destructive ability from below and through the sides of walls, and then we just kind of we accept the gambit, or we accept the concession, I should say, of not being able to blow stuff up because you have more destructive capability? Is that okay? Is it okay if he has one thing that he can blow up? If we're going to take away the can opener, which I agree, being able to just kind of have like a blanket sort of, okay, I'm working vert, and then I'm going to open the hatch in case somebody gets C4'd. It's not a big deal. That is a pretty decent concession to give to somebody who is already a committed vertical character. That combination of verticality plus can openers is like, he's kind of an instant lock in a lot of scenarios. So I am curious if we're going to take away the can opener, if we can't give him back the Gon 6, if that's kind of the option that we're looking at. But that's, something that I have been thinking about. We're kind of looking at the whole, he's the one-man army in many situations kind of thing again. But, Ubisoft, I love you guys, but let's look at the chart again whenever this goes around. Okay, well, your game is pretty much one-man armies versus one-man armies. Like, when you're in a gunfighting kind of environment, you're going to pick versatility over specifics. A little bit more grammatically pleasing there. And then interestingly enough, we're nerfing some trap operators. So Capkin has lost his C4. That's going to be replaced with barbed wire. Kind of a welcome change, in my opinion. I think the fact that he had, to their point, right, a bunch of explosives and they were already pretty effective. When you're in a gunfighting environment, I've noticed that, or maybe this is just me and my like ADHD ass brain and its inability to keep like certain levels of mental bandwidth in stressful situations. I've noticed that like when you allocate a certain amount of mental bandwidth to just like taking engagements, right? When you're combing through a map and you're thinking like, okay, common angle, off angle, common, right, off, right. Oh, he's peeking this, right? You're going to be focusing a lot more on that and the potential swing that you're going to get met with than to, take a second to like look down at the doorway. So a lot of people make fun of like getting killed by a Capkin trap, but like I saw a triple Capkin trap make the difference during the final game, right? Match point all the way down to the wire at a LAN. That was the Atlanta major that propelled W7M to go off and just really start popping off that year after Atlanta, which I still have the oh, there goes my the Atlanta badge here. These are all going to go on a backdrop on the wall here in a little bit, by the way. So yeah, you have professional players, guys that get paid a lot of money to have their ducks in a row in terms of, you know, like avoiding stupid mistakes, and Capkin still performs well in that environment. So yeah, I think people can get over this one. We go down to Legion 2, another trap operator getting slightly tuned, but not too much. And I do appreciate this, right? We're seeing here, okay, take away one mine. This guy can just, you can bring him whenever you want. There's absolutely no environment where he really like loses anything or takes anything away from the team. He can put mines on the bomb site. He can put mines out for the roam, right? He just like, he has so much. He does so much. So we're going to take away a mine and we're going to increase the cooldown a little bit, but we're not just going to like whack him over the head with the nerf bat, right? We're not going to kill him. I appreciate changes like this. I would like to see Ubisoft do a little bit more, just like slight tweaks, just a little bit, you know, just a little bit. Good idea in terms of, you know, we see a problem here. Let's address it in a way that doesn't completely burn the crap out of, you know, people who are attached to the character, but also kind of keeps things in line with the balancing vision. Go down to Oryx. Pretty decent Oryx buff. Oryx is able to get out of his recovery time faster than he was able to. So he's going to play a lot more quickly off of the actual dash ability. Now, some people might look at that and say, well, aren't we trying to get away from a gunfight meta? Aren't we a little bit sick of this? But Oryx, I think, is a novel enough character to the point where you can, you know, see a case to be made in that instance. When we look up at the chart here, we don't really see Oryx get a ton of play, right? I mean, like, look here, this is on console, and then kind of the same story on PC, right? Just hovering around like 5%. So I do think that that is a welcome change for him because he didn't really have as much going for him as he used to. Ram also got a slight nerf. She had her pocket shotgun taken away. From a fun factor, from like a purely fun, right? And that's the only reason. I am a little bit bummed out about this change, but from a balance perspective, I do understand. One thing that I was able to do with Ram pretty often on Chalet, and I got this trick from a professional game, is that you can go up on the balcony, right, that goes overlooking the entire like main lobby, that adjacent balcony next to fireplace, and you can throw the bookie car all the way down from that top floor kind of position down towards main stairs, activate the bookie car, and then you can actually get a shot on the bandit trigger or shoot off the utility in a lot of cases, especially mute jammers, right? Because there's not a lot of options for placing those things. And then you can shotgun down below. So Ram was like just really good. I mean, she's still really good. She's going to be great after this even. It's still just a tremendously useful character in this current environment where, you know, people don't want to just like go into a giant funnel of off angles and you know, head holes, walls, crap open, right, ACOGs. People are going to try to get verticality going. People are going to try to actually, you know, break apart the puzzle setup that the defense has. And Ram is really good for that because she opens so much vertical so quickly and so safely and so efficiently. Taking away the shotgun, I think, was kind of inevitable, and I would prefer that over taking away a car or nerfing the R4C because, you know, I think that she's fun to play in that aspect, right, of having that kind of gun with an ACOG. And I'm okay with this change. Out of all the options to nerf her, I think this was the best thing to do. So there's lots of talk about verticality, and here's the big one, right? Here is the I think the part of the patch that people are going to be the happiest with, and that is Sledge is back to a 2-speed, baby. That's right. So we looked at the pick rate. We said, hey, he's down here now, so let's do something to him. Good. Can we please, Ubisoft, can we please do more of this? Can we look at, you know, stats down here and be like, hey, if this character doesn't have, you know, all of these options, right, let's give them a slight tweak to the option, right? And then let's make them more fun to play, and then we can adjust later, right? If it turns out to be OP or whatever. So, you know, the Sledge I don't think ever really needed to be a 3 armor. I think that, you know, he's been having a rough time for the past couple of years, and this is something that was a long time coming for him. Just like being so slow and being so loud, right, with the verticality, and just like he was a massive C4 magnet, which really just did not help him. Ram obviously doesn't have to worry about that as much because she's activating the boogie car from a distance. Sledge literally like walks up to the thing, and then he has to stand right on top of the thing and then go down with the hammer, and then he can't run away from a C4. If a C4 does come his way, I guess he can withstand one a little bit more with 3 armor, but like, come on, right? So really, really good change for him, and I think Ubisoft should definitely do more changes like that. We also got a damage drop-off change to slug shotguns. There's a lot of talk here. What you really need to know is that the Boss G got nerfed a little bit, but not too much. I still get pretty decent mileage out of the Boss G, just not like all the way from here to, you know, the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? I think the actual engagement distance, which is about like medium range, you know, 14 meters, is fine, right? It's usable. You can still one-shot down people, and I think that's appropriate with this kind of weapon. Really, really cool to see. I think that, you know, I'm glad that Ubisoft was willing to listen to feedback in terms of a gunfight-based argument, and instead of, you know, capitulate, I think, to the whole argument of like, well, if thing requires clicking, then it is balanced because other people can't click, and I'm a really good clicker. So nobody should nerf me because I can click on people, right? That's, you know, kind of a reductive way to look at FPS games. I'm glad that they were still able to look at this and say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, right? If it looks cool, right? You can like one-shot anybody to the chest from like a million miles away, and it doesn't matter if the other player has better positioning, has better crosshair placement, has better, right? Like, just, you know, that's fine. Good change. And then we go down here, and then the G36 got a recoil buff, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I'm glad to see that we're looking at options that people aren't using as much, and we're saying, hey, can we get away with, you know, making this a little bit easier to use, make this a little bit more fun? Let's kind of, right? Let's give it a little nudge in the right direction. That's cool. So really rare instance where I look for the patch notes and I'm like, I pretty much agree with every single thing here. I do want to give Buck the Gon 6 back though. Maybe just an idea. But yeah, overall really good patch, and that's all I got. So huge thank you to everybody who's been still watching the channel up to this day. It really means a lot to me that you're still a part of this community and watching content, you know, after several months, pretty much, you know, just taking time away from doing these kinds of uploads. As you can tell, I'm in a completely new environment. The audio quality sounds just a little bit tinny because we haven't, you know, I haven't exactly got the acoustic treatment that I want to get set up quite yet. But I am pretty much, you know, starting over here. I've had a, you know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for the last 5-6 months, to be very candid, and people have been very supportive on my streams. The current schedule is Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. If I get a retail job, which is surprisingly a lot more difficult, even with my college degree, than I ever thought imaginable, that timing may change. But from what it seems to be, that might take a while to change. So feel free to go there and drop a follow, and I'm gonna make a concerted effort to follow that schedule. I know I'm very flip-floppity on it, but I did stream 4 out of 5 days that I said I would, which is better than I usually do. Also, not that it matters to anybody, but today marks a year since I started HRT. That is the best decision I have ever made in my life. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for remaining a part of this community and for making the GGE a safe space to everybody in the LGBT community. It truly means a lot to me. It's truly special. And don't feel excluded. Cis-het, 30-year-old white guys, you guys are all allies. You guys are a part of something really awesome just for being here and just not being a dick. That literally means something. Thank you. Deuces.